there is one person responsible to secure the quality of the water. We have made a lot of efforts. We have 8 kilometers in our community, in the Changshu Road community. I could notice and observe that there are fishes in the water that we can see. As compared to the past days, we can see the comparison, the improvement has been obvious. We could see a lot of local people, they want to take a walk along the river, just as you can see the line for the walk. So we have clean water, we have a beautiful environment, so we want to further improve the environment. Upon the instruction of the municipal government, we also want to open the river and creek bank to the people, and people can enjoy the specific culture. So for Putuo district, we have taken the measures to actually combine the creek to the local culture. We opened the previously closed lane. So for M50, it is a creative park. And this location was called Xinhe Textile Factory, and then after several changes, it became Chunming Textile Factory. So we have the relics of the textile industry. Previously, we have 50 more the buildings for the textile industry. In the development of Shanghai, we have demolished so many old buildings. So for this block to be maintained, the M50, it is very precious. There was also an expert sharing with us how to preserve the M50 factory area. And by preserving this area, we could find the hint of history. And through these hints, we can have a feeling for the history, for the culture. For a nation and for a country, culture is an important foundation to preserve the culture. It is also meaningful for the local people. And now M50, it is no longer a block of industrial relics. It is a park for development. We have the traditional culture here. And for M50 Creative Park, it has attracted Western and modern artists. It is also a way to combine the traditional and modern culture. And for M50 Park, it has become the most famous place to gather the artists in Shanghai. It has influence in China and even all across the world. M50 is now an icon of Shanghai. Why we say it is M50? M represents Moganshan mountain road. Along the Suzhou River, there was such a road, and this park is number 50 along the road, so it is called M50. And for M50, it is better suitable for the aura of artists. So to call it M50, it may be better used to attract artists. From the beginning of 1990s, we have gathered so many artists here. So we have a small cat here, a cat along an iron tube. It shows the taste of artists. So we are going to have a close touch on the artistic environment of M50. So we are entering into the M50 Creative Park. It was originated from Xinhe Textile Factory, and it has a history of more than 80 years. A lot of old buildings have been preserved, and we have invited Huang Wei, the person in charge for M50 Park, to share with us. And upon entering into M50, we can see the graffiti, and it is called Xinhe Textile Factory. And previously, we believe it was held by a British merchant, but originally, this factory was held by an Anhui province merchant. And then the factory was relocated to Moganshan Mountain Road. And back then, Chinese merchants have not been allowed to operate in the specific area in the Moganshan mountain area. And later on, this factory was registered in this area as belonging to a British merchant. And it shows the history back in 1930s. It was started and held by a Chinese merchant, but it needed to be registered as a British-held enterprise. It shows the history back then before the establishment of New China. And M50 was at the location number 50 of Moganshan Road. And we are going to take a walk along this park. You can see that we have a very intense feeling of artists. So we have preserved the old factories, and the artists, they have so many creative ideas. So for our artists, they focus on modern arts, the factories, and the windows, they are painted with the pictures of the artists. For this park, we have 2 upgradings, 2 renovations, but the purpose for us is to preserve the original taste of the park. So all the buildings have been started back in 1930s, and the newest building has been built in 1990s. So we could see that for the textile building, we could see the boiler building and the warehouse, and all these have been changed into galleries and workshops. So it represents a communication from now to the past. And we are entering into a previous factory. And now we are during the SUSAS Shanghai Urban Art season. And now we have the Putuo district site project. So we are entering into this exhibition project. And for this rainy day, it is suitable for us to explore the history of Suzhou Creek. So we could see that we have the curator, Xue Song, of this exhibition. And would you introduce to us this exhibition? We are a part of the 2019 Shanghai Urban Art season, and we could see that this is for the whole Suzhou Creek of 21 kilometers in Putuo district. We start from the waterfront concept to a dynamic Putuo district. We link the past and the future. So this is the theme of this exhibition. So we are coming forward to see that for this exhibition, we have 3 aspects. One is we want to show the Suzhou Creek, 21 kilometer, and the planning in the future. So the landscape and Suzhou Creek will be an important connection, will provide a very favorable environment for people's lives. Suzhou Creek has been changed for the past decade. It is more and more in line with high-quality life. So we want to show this change. And this is for the second part. This is for the new landscape, new tourist scenes for Changshu community. And M50 is also here. It is an important industrial heritage. From 1999, M50 has become a creative park. It has a history of more than 20 years. A lot of artists have gathered here and have grown up here. And many artists have gained international influence. We could see for these scenes, we have 6 scenes for the Suzhou Creek. So it is not about life only, it is also about people's culture. So we say that culture can enlighten people's lives. M50 can show us the fantasies of Shanghai. It has history of 80 years. Previously, M50 was an area of industrial factories, but now it is an area of art. So we can look upward. We have so many works of the previous artists. these works were from 1980s and earlier. We have so many photos, the photos of workers there. So for Suzhou Creek, it represents the industrial civilization of Shanghai. So at the very beginning, we could see that for Suzhou Creek, it is the birthplace of China's industrialization. So we could see these photos representing the very beginning of China's industrialization, and we also have on exhibition here these photos. And also the Chunming textile factory. It was originally the very important building in the M50 area. So we could have a glimpse of the history. You can see these lines. It represents that we will go to work and go back from work safely. So many people are very happy for M50 to become a creative park because this place bears people's memories. So for Shanghai people, maybe our memories are in these old factories, old industrial area. So for this area to become a creative park, it is very important and interesting. If we can preserve our memories and history, it is also a very important part for us to actually integrate with the modern art. You can also see that for a delicate art space, it is also a place for the party and ordinary people interaction. So we have been talking about Suzhou Creek and different kind of scenes. But what we want to do is to facilitate the lives of people. But for this place to have party people interaction, it is also to offer convenience to the people. This is actually a service center, and this service center has a scent of art. So we could see this service center is at a specific place, a creative park. We hope that we can integrate into the atmosphere. So you can see the decoration and the design, they are in line with the outside atmosphere. We have a volunteer here. What are you doing? I'm volunteering here. You live around here. I live around this neighborhood. And I feel very good working here, very happy. And I could actually have free access to exhibitions working here. Would you actually introduce to us what are the things on the blackboards? And for this service center, it has multiple functions. And for our volunteers, they have a lot of effort. And we also offer facilitation to the people working in this factory area. And a lot of local citizens, they would also come to this service center. On these blackboards, you can also see the functions of the volunteer service. And we draw these lines on the blackboards because it has more a flavor of being artistic. And you can see this picture, it is very interesting. It shows the history along the Suzhou Creek. While decorating this service center, we hope that it can be aligned with culture and art. And for Changshulu community, it has cultural endowments. And for the red paintings, you can see they are the famous museums and exhibitions, such as the textile exhibitions and other exhibitions. And for the blue ones, you can see they represent historical buildings. You can also see this kind of beer factory and the textile factory. These blue sites are traditional buildings. We have themed parks. And Shanghai Beer Factory is now preserved as an important representation for the previous buildings. And we have a community school. And the community school has the calligraphy of Yu Qiuyu, a very famous writer. It is an old building and it is preserved very carefully. And we have the coin-making factory, and we have also the printing factory of Shanghai. All these buildings are in our neighborhood. And we can see these charts. they show the activities in the service center, and you can see this is the arrangement for the activities this month. The communication among artists, as well as the trainings for teenagers. We also have calligraphy courses. All these are for free. So for this kind of service center, we focus on art and culture. And you can also see this one. This one is very cute. The recruitment for the volunteers. We're also going forward. We can see the remaining of the old factories. So would you introduce to us during the before 1949, we have the relics from the old factories. You can see this is an accountant's book from Xinhe textile factory before 1949. So this is about the procurement, the operation of the factories, as well as the equipment operation. And you can also see this. We see that Xinhe factory is the first batch of the shareholding company in Shanghai. You can also see the shareholding agreement here. We could see how China's domestic and national enterprises have survived the difficulties and become stronger. So we could see Shanghai Textile Company. It is also a shareholding company. And here we have the old photos. And for M50, it has several changes in names. For Xinhe Textile Factory, it has several different names, and now this area is called M50. So for the change of names represent the change of times. So before 1949, we have different kind of names, and then we have the shareholding reform, and then we changed the area and factory into a creative park. So it is now called M50. So from these photos, we can have a glimpse at people's memories. So you are grown up here in Moganshan Road. So I have my memory here. I lived along the Suzhou Creek, and for Moganshan Road, it is the place where I first studied riding bicycles. There were few vehicles on the road, so it was a good place for us to learn studying and riding bicycles. So in my memory, Suzhou Creek was dirty. People wouldn't want to go along the river. But now for M50, the creek has been cleaned, and we could see the birds and the fishes along the Suzhou Creek. So for such a clean environment, it is in the memory of my father's generation. After several times of industrialization, the creek has become polluted. But after several years of effort, the creek has become so clean again. And it can also supply the water for the local people. So it is very good as an experience. And now for M50, it is a public-owned company. So we belong to a state asset. So we are also a worker in the state asset. So we are trying to exploring the history of Suzhou Creek and M50. So for such a weather, I may recall a TV series concerning the love story along the Suzhou Creek. So for these rainy days, it is very romantic. So this is not like the Creative Park 798 in Beijing. We see M50 is smaller. But for M50, we can show the spirit of local community. So it is like we are exploring the local community of Shanghai. You can see in front of us, it was previously a water tower, and we have now a new drawings, the female workers in the new era of Shanghai. So we could see the happy faces of the female workers, and the water tower is preserved fully. So it is also what we are proud of. We preserved historical buildings as they are. So for water tower, they are very rare in urban Shanghai, and we could see the one and only chimney in the city of Shanghai. And for chimney, it is not environmentally friendly nowadays, but it is a landmark here. And here we are passing through M50. It is like the local line, and for Shanghai, Shanghai has this natural culture. Previously, we have the work and life next to each other. For the local lines in the past, we have a very specific environment, and this is very typical of local Shanghai. And for so many artists, they would go through the lanes and roads of Shanghai, and they will also show and peddle away their artworks to the grandmothers and grandpas. And the artists will also discuss with each other. And the artists like this kind of life, and the life is quiet, but the life also feels real, like real life. So this is different for the traditional museums. So we have offered the ordinary life to the artists. So we have this spirit that we want to make very delicate things from a very small place. You can see the very narrow line. So this narrow line is frequent in the novels. And you can see upon the entrance of each line, we have very specific installation. And for the whole environment, it shows the actual life, the delicate lifestyle of Shanghai people, and especially the artists. They have their own perspectives to make the whole environment more artistic. So you seem very proud of this environment. We could see that for this line, this landscape, it shows a special style. And that is why M50 has become a cultural icon for the artists or for those people who favor the arts. For teenagers, they want to experience dynamic blocks. And they also want to experience a new life. And in this environment, people may feel the vitality, and young people would like to come here. And for our city, we need many places like M50. And this place has historical memories, but it also has artistic flavor. And in the urban renewal, this way is what we want to achieve and explore. And for the micro-urban renewal, it is not large-scale renovation. We want to preserve the building with new meanings, and we preserve the buildings of various stages in history. Maybe especially for M50, the factory may have 90 years of history, and this building may show the experience of different stages. You can also see here some part of the building were built in 1938. And if we go through these buildings, we can have experience of history. And certain buildings were built in 1950s. And this shows the passing down of history. And for different ages, we could see typical feature. For industrial civilization, it also has typical stages. So while preserving the building, we preserve the typical features. For each block, it is a very important place for artists. So we are going to see the workshops of artists. We have very famous, especially internationally famous artists here in M50. Maybe for this place it is small, but the roads are not so easy to recognize. For Shanghai, we have those narrow lines, and we see that during the weekends, we have a lot of people here in M50. A lot of young people take selfies here, and we have a lot of exhibitions. You can see inside each window, we can see a story. We have foreign friends here. We have exhibition halls, and the artists will also discuss with each other. So this place is not about gallery, it is a place of communication. For the red brick building, it is so beautiful. So we have the sound of the vessels along the port. So along the Suzhou Creek, we have the real life element. So we have certain suspense. And in a minute, you can listen to the sound of Suzhou Creek. And here, we see the one only chimney in the inner circle, in the ring of Shanghai. And for this chimney, it is a landmark of M50. It is the highest chimney in downtown Shanghai. And before M50 was suspended for industrial production, the chimney was operational, but later on, the chimney became a landmark. It shows the memory of this place as the area for textile factories. And for the boiler, it used coal to produce the textiles. And this is a part, especially a reflection for the history of M50. And now the chimney becomes a place for people to take photos. Maybe post-90s and post-new century are watching our program. Your mothers, your fathers may know that for Shanghai, textile industry has been very famous in Shanghai. And for Shanghai, we see that every household, they will have one or two female workers. And back then, textile industry was the cornerstone of Shanghai's industry. So we could see that previously, textile industry was also very important after even China's reform and opening up. So we could see this kind of space will have the attractions for artists. You can see we are entering into a workshop of an artist, so we will knock on the door and have a glimpse of what is happening inside. And we have an internationally famous artist in M50. It is a rare chance to come inside to see how the artist works. So we could have a glimpse at how the artist works and lives in M50. This workshop is so great, we could see. So I will introduce to you Mr. Gu. I'm from CCTV News. So for your place, it is very broad and suitable for creation. So thanks to the old factory, we have a large space. So what are you doing here? These are all your works? I'm here to prepare for an exhibition reviewing my past works and documentaries. And you can see the space. It is large, and I need such a large space. And we have so many exhibits here. So why did you choose M50 as your workshop? In 1993, I came back to Shanghai. I worked at a warehouse. And at last, I had a chance to visit a warehouse as my workshop. And later on, after visiting so many places and localities, I chose M50. And here we had the prosperous business, and we have the narrow lanes, this old flavor of Shanghai. And there is also a river, Suzhou Creek, along in M50. And Suzhou Creek is one of the reasons I choose M50. Suzhou Creek shows the history of Shanghai, and Suzhou Creek is Mother River of Shanghai. And for Suzhou Creek, back then it was dirty. After several years of management, this creek is now clean, so the whole environment is good. And now we have the incoming line that people can take a walk around. So if I can walk from my family, my home to the workshop for 30 minutes, it is very good. So for an artist, maybe an artist will need a river to see the scene, to see the city. And for artists, back then when I was in New York, I would say that for New York, they have a lot of people with money, but they don't have taste. A lot of artists, they have the taste, but they don't have the money. So we need to make up for each other's shortcomings. So for Shanghai, Shanghai has such an environment for us to make up for each other's shortcomings. Previously, a painting gallery was closed because there was no art museums, no new art museums in Guangdong. And for Shanghai, we have a booming art museum situation, and Shanghai is internationalized. And Shanghai has been a very important attraction for artists. And internationally, people think Shanghai is a window of China, especially a window of modern China culture. And this is also another of my work. If we can take a walk around your workshop. So I see the columns, they are preserved. The columns, bricks, they are preserved as they were. I like the columns, and they are in their old conditions. I try to preserve the building based on the original condition, original structure of the factories of the original building. So you can see the room is very high because it was originally a warehouse for a textile factory. You can see the building is very solid after even 80 years of history. I have the feeling that my home and my workshop is not separated. I can work here, I can even live here. Many artists regard M50 as their home. M50 has its own challenge. And we could see that Shanghai has a lot of improvements in M50. It has the opportunity to develop further. So we even have so many setbacks in the development of M50. Maybe we face the danger of demolition, etc. So for city renewal, it is a challenging task, even with setbacks, but people pay more and more attention. So city renewal bears the heritage of our culture, of our industry. So I think this is very interesting. Would you introduce to us? So this is a part of my exhibition, and this is back in 2000. I tried to explore the culture along the waterfronts. Can you guess what is the ink made from? I think that today we are in an era of bioscience, so we want to link the ink to the bioscience. So this is made from the powder of human hair. And we have the green tea, and the green tea made the paper. So for this painting, it is not just about pictures, but the material, the ink and the paper, they are art themselves. So we have a key information here in this painting. So the material has changed. You can see these three characters. They represent black, silk, rain. So we could see that this is actually a combination of Chinese calligraphy with the Western culture. So for China, we focus on the cultural elements in calligraphy. If you don't have the taste, if you don't have the knowledge, you cannot appreciate the beauty or the history inside these paintings, inside these calligraphies. I think what you are doing is that you incorporate the cultural gene into the ink. So for this factory, it has also the cultural gene of Shanghai. We have so many creative space, and for each creative space, they want to explore their own brand. So in the future, we need a lot of creative space. Each space needs to be unique. It is not a life or death competition. It is for mutual assistance and mutual development. So we will favor diversity. And for M50, the challenge is it has to be unique. It has to have a unique feature. M50 is the creative park with the longest history in China. M50 has now become a tourist scene in Shanghai. And I feel that for M50, it needs to have unique culture. Putuo district does not have such a icon culture. I hope that M50 can be the cultural icon of this district. M50 needs to be given the priority. And this cultural icon needs to be centered on M50 and Suzhou Creek. And the government needs to build a cultural icon. And the development of Putuo district needs to be also centered on this icon and how to utilize this icon to create new culture. So this is the government and what the art government need to be thinking about. And for Putuo district, the government is building this Suzhou Creek block and following your direction. And we need to actually promote the influence of this cultural icon. Thank you. So we will come around, and thank you for your introduction. And for these old artists, they are passionate about this place, and they are wholeheartedly loving this place. And the artist, Mr. Gu, he is a local Shanghai people. He has been working in New York and other places, but he returned here. And this shows his affection for his hometown. And for this place, we have so many things which will recall or inspire the reminiscence of these old people. And we are visiting another workshop. And for this line, we could see this is a Moganshan road. It is a very narrow line, but for this road, it bears the memory of so many people. And this road is where I first studied to ride a bicycle. And this bears my memory in my young age. You can see this is the building was built in 1937, and this was one of the earliest buildings in this M50 area. And this was the official office area for these textile factories back in 1930s. So this building has a history of more than 80 years. So we could not see the 80 years history, because after the renovation, it is a very beautiful coffee bar. So if you sit in the coffee bar, you can feel the communication of history. So for each building, we will have actually a note about the previous history of each building. So this is for the original site of a textile factory. So if you scan the code, you can know the history of each building. And for buildings, they are the reflection and the representation of past history. So if you read the building, you can read the history. And for M50, it is also a famous and 3A level tourist scene. So if you can come here, you can visit and have a glimpse of this area. So this is also a very big factory with 4,000 square kilometers. So this is a very large factory. It has 2 stories. So we are visiting an artist, Mr. Chu, and the workshop is actually in this factory. So this is a very broad area. So we can feel the atmosphere of 1980s. And the factory was built in 1938, actually, not 1980s. And we can also see that on both sides, we have workshops of artists. A lot of artists, they even lived here. And at the very beginning in this place, there were so many machines and factories. And now people find that this place is better suited to be art workshops. So artists favor here to have their own creation and imagination here. You can also see we are visiting the workshop of Xue Song, a famous artist. If you open this door, it will show you a very interesting sight. And Suzhou Creek is also the mother river of Shanghai, and textile industry is also a very important foundation of Shanghai's industry. So we are witnessing the spark of textile industry and the mother river. So you are said to be the first to discover the artistic value of Suzhou Creek. I was the first to come here. I needed a workshop. I could not work at my home, so I came into this place. I wanted to find a place that suited our needs. And by chance even, I came here. And this place had the height we need and has the silence and environment we need, and the price was even very good. Back then, the price was not very high. Back then, when you came here, this place was to be demolished. Back then, when I came here, you can see the photos. Back then, the place was like this. The Suzhou Creek and the bankrupted factories, they were to be demolished. And this side is like what we can see in films. So the very remote and not so promising scene during the half-demolished factories. But now the place becomes a concentration area for artists. You can see that here are your works, and these works may show your affection for Shanghai. From 1985, I first arrived in Shanghai. It has been more than 30 years since I have been lived and working here. So I experienced the changes of this city. And this is for the famous scenes of Shanghai, the combination of the traditional and modern culture. And I use the old photos to make such a picture. So would you share with us your experience at M50? It is very interesting. So back then when I was here, the equipment in the previous factories were not removed, but the factory operation have been suspended. Back then, there were the textile factories and the printing factories. And back then, the place were full of even warehouses. I tried to have a glimpse of the Suzhou Creek. I had a very large space. I had been there for more than 1.5 years. I made friends with the artists with similar needs. And after several times, so many artists have gathered here. So in 1990s, M50 and Moganshan Road was not like today. And back then, I encountered several pigs on the street. I was so curious because in Shanghai, pigs and chickens wandering around on roads. But now this thing cannot be seen. We cannot see pigs and chickens. Now we can only see the artistic, famous people. So in 1990s, the situation was not like today, but back then we had a promising beginning. The artists, they have the demands for larger space, and for M50, it has the factories, so it is a match. So for your time here, you witness and experience the past 2 decades of M50. So what do you make of this experience? Back then, when we were first here, we wanted to have a place that we can stay for long. And we were a little bit concerned for the possible demolition. But to see today this stable place for artists, we are very happy. I believe that for a mature society, people of different tastes, people of different artistic pursuit, they need to have the place to develop. Thank you. So for this painting, it is like graffiti. So previously we used wooden board. You can see the trace here on the wall, different kind of images, and I try to preserve these trace of history. You can see the sense of history on these walls. So for buildings, they have their own language. They show history in their own way, just like paintings. So we could see the environment of this workshop is totally aligned with the style of painting of our artist. So in this building, we see the influence, the accumulation of historical traces. Mr. Luo, you are also one of the first batch to come here in M50. Later than Mr. Xue, I follow his steps to come here, because for me to work and live in M50, Mr. Xue was very famous. So back then, when I was having my workshop here in M50, I heard of Mr. Xue. So back then, I think that for a longer term of contract, it was very important. So I could sign a longer term contract here for this place. And the rent was not very high. And the longer I sign, I got lower rent, and the rent have not been rising so greatly for the first few years. And for us, the early comers, we have the policy incentives for the slowly rising rent. And we have so many artists, the cameraman, photographer, a painter here. So the question is addressed to the artist from Beijing. So you are from Beijing, so why you live and work here? To live here, I become accustomed to this place. And the key here is that I can have access to such a large space. And in Beijing, the space is very rare. And in M50, I had such a large space, and I got accustomed to this. I tried to find similar place in Beijing, but I didn't succeed. So in our city, we need to have such buildings which can help us to attract the artists, to facilitate their creation, to facilitate the innovation and new ideas. We hope that art-related activities can be sustained here in similar space. For M50, it has the buildings from 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, even to 1980s. The buildings of various stages, various ages. So this area is diversified. So in M50, you can see the continuous development of this city. So the iteration of history, the destruction, reconstruction, and construction. So for this park, you can feel the modern history, and each individual can have their own way. And this place is very diversified. And to work here as an artist, it is more favorable than working in a newly built area, because we have a sense of participating in history. The buildings are of various ages, and the occupants of the buildings, they from different kind of field of arts, and we can have communications, and we can find what we need here, find the elements we need here. Mr. Xue has been the earliest comer to M50, and his space has experienced so many changes upon his design. So if we talk about places with a lot of artists, the first place that comes to my mind is M50. So for M50, we can feel not only art, but also people's life. And life is very important for artists. And the style is very unique for M50. Thank you. Thank you. And this is very good because you create art here, you also create a new history here in this place. And we will then go to another place in M50. We will go forward. Thank you. And just now we talk about inside each window, inside each door, we will have one story. If coming into one's doorstep, we are experiencing a new history. We have about 50 to 60 institutions here in M50, and at its peak, there has been 500 artists in M50. So it shows the history of art development in Shanghai. This is very rare for 20 years. If a country or a city has 20 years of art development, it is a memory of this city. So this is worth preserving, worth developing. Especially for the artists, they offer a lot of insights and inputs for the current exhibition. And the exhibition this year focus on water, and Suzhou Creek will be open all along next year. So we have this cooperation with Shanghai Music Academy. We have an installation, and this installation becomes a major part of this Pu Tuo exhibition. And just now we have mentioned that the netizens, the audience can listen to Suzhou Creek. We can actually have a listen of the Suzhou Creek. And along the Suzhou Creek, we have these tubes. And this is for our cooperation with the Shanghai Music Academy. It is a soundscape, a sound landscape. And in this installation, we have 5 sounds. You can have a listen. The sound along the port, the songs, folk songs of the salesperson, and the sound of people's daily life. And these songs are frequent for people living neighboring the Suzhou Creek. I can see the whistle of the small boat. You can see for different kind of trumpet, you can hear different sound. So have a listen. This is the siren, steam siren. The steam siren is very common along the river for the steamboat. And upon listening to this sound, you can have a feeling of the ordinary life along Suzhou Creek. It is like I'm interviewing the siren. So it is very good because we not only see Suzhou Creek, we also listen Suzhou Creek. And the installation is called Listening and Hearing the Creek. On the bank, we can hear the siren, we can hear the paddling sound, we can hear people's daily life. And this sound is very precious because this reminds us of the daily life. So we are living in this place. We want to be aware of the place. We want to preserve the place and respect the place. And these songs also show our best wishes for the future. And for the artists, they have their deepest affection for Suzhou Creek, for M50. And through our broadcast, you know that Suzhou Creek is not only just a river, it is the memories of generation of Shanghai people. And the official opening for the Suzhou Creek, it is not just in the literal sense. It is a communication and combination of history and modern era. So if you speak here, the sound will pass on to the other end. So we could see that for the sound to pass through these tubes, we want to represent the official passing through of Suzhou Creek. I do hope that at the very end, you can have a listen to the sound of Suzhou Creek. We have prepared a video to show the future Suzhou Creek. Let's look forward to the official passing through of Suzhou Creek in 2020. So today we show you the most beautiful 1 kilometer of Suzhou Creek. In the future, we may have more most beautiful kilometers in the future. So you can have a listen for the sound of Suzhou Creek.